Danielle, I am so excited to have you on because your expertise is in an area that many people need. And I'll say mostly women because it's women that mainly listen to the podcast. Sorry, guys. I mean, keep listening if you're a dude, because this can hit you as well. But I think that women tend to, and I'll let you speak on this as well, tend to get hit with emotional eating and sugar addiction a little bit more heavier than men, simply because we have more fluctuating crazy hormones, and I know that drives emotional eating as well. But regardless, we're going to dive into that question and more. Thank you for coming on because your knowledge is needed for my audience.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you. Thank you for that right off the bat. I'm really touched and so excited to dive into this topic and share what I can in the time that we have.
So let's start with that question. Do you find in your work that sugar addictions, emotional eating tend to be swayed more toward females than males?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Now, I will fully disclose that I'm probably biased because I only work with women. So I don't have a lot of conversations with men. I do actually have some friends or people in my network that are definitely men that struggle with sugar. So it's a problem for all human beings.
Yeah.
And we all have some sort of complicated relationship with food or coping mechanism where we're using food or alcohol or porn, or, I think most men maybe tend to have more addictions to things like that, right? Porn
Right.
or alcohol, or and food has become such a crutch for women. Yeah, I think for various reasons, but yeah, I would say it's definitely more of a female outlet. Not to
Mm-hmm.
say men can't absolutely be struggling with this as well.
Right. Okay. And how much do our hormones come into play? I mean, obviously, we're going to be getting into what are the actual root causes of sugar addiction, but I want to focus on hormones really quickly before we dive into the other root causes. What do you see in the hormone realm as it relates to that sugar addiction or any kind of craving?
For sure. Obviously, we have to talk about hormones here on your podcast, right? That's what we're here for. And I will like upfront say this is not my area of expertise or passion. I'm really in, and I'll share this. This will make sense because when we look at our addictions to sugar as a society, there is definitely a piece of that is physical. The physical addictions, what's happening to our insulin, our blood sugar, our dopamine centers in our brain, our gut, just the wreaking havoc that's happening in all systems of our body, not just our hormonal systems,
Mm.
when we overindulge and overeat processed food, sugar, seed oils, all the toxins that we're putting in our body, sugar being a big part of that. So definitely, I'm sure you can speak to this even better, on the hormone front, but sugar is getting in there. And for, just kind of the quick overview, right? Absolutely wreaking havoc on our insulin levels, which is, we know, hopefully is a hormone, really damaging our thyroid, damaging our gut lining, which just affects, all the systems in our body, our metabolism, our lymphatic system, our liver, all the things are really being affected. So our hormones are, this is just another sort of gut punch to the systems and hormones in our body that are causing things to become dysregulated or things to become out of whack, for women to be having more intense PMS symptoms. I mean, more intense hormonal ups and downs. Same with blood sugar ups and downs, right? We're kind of on this drastic roller coaster. It's no wonder sometimes we feel like crazy and sometimes we feel really calm, right? And that sort of emotional, energetic roller coaster that we're on. So the physical component is a big part of it, for sure. I mean, when we're eating these toxic substances and we're especially overeating them, we're just, our whole lives really kind of creating this perfect storm inside our physical body. But
Mhm.
where I'm really passionate and my area of expertise lies is more in the energetic, emotional, subconscious pieces. Because what I've seen in my practice over the last 9 years very clearly is that no matter how long you're off sugar, no matter how freaking amazing you feel and how great your hormones are and your sleep is and you're losing weight and you feel great, something inevitably always happens that triggers, at least with the women I work with and for myself back in the day, would trigger right back into those binge roller coasters.
Uh-huh.
And that's what really made me fascinated about, like, okay, so how can we feel so physically great and be feeling like we've got our physical cravings and addiction under control, but there's still this really big pull. And this is
Yeah.
where we're getting into, like you've already kind of teased, conversation about what I believe is really the root causes of addiction and of what is driving us. No matter how long we've willpowered ourselves to eat healthy, to look after ourselves, if we don't actually look at the foundation and the cracks that are in our foundation, we're going to continue being sort of in that roller coaster. You might be good for a year, and then there's death in the family, you lose your job, your husband leaves you, like there's something that happens, and you go on vacation, and all of a sudden you're back into the old patterns, if that makes sense.
Oh, totally, totally. And when I say hormones, I'm actually kind of thinking about the PMS time where, the classic picture of the woman during PMS is a pint of Ben and Jerry's and just sitting there going to town, or she breaks up with her boyfriend and give me the bag of Oreos. So that's what I'm thinking about, women and hormonal fluctuations driving that eating. But that's kind of more of a circumstance. That's something that happens, or it's a time in the month that hormones start to shift and turn. But when you're working with people on true emotional eating or true sugar addiction, let's go into those root causes, because I'm super curious as to what you find.
Let's do it. Yeah, so this has been an unfolding, and I'll do my best to sort of summarize it because there's so many different layers. But I'll just come out right out of the gate and say that, I believe, in the research and the people that I follow, like Gabor Mate, if you're familiar with him, experts in the addiction space,
Mhm.
understand that addiction is actually rooted in trauma. And when we say trauma, I mean, there's lots of different definitions of that. Everybody has their own like feelings about the word trauma. We're talking essentially about our experiences in our younger years that have shaped our inner world and essentially actually wired our nervous system. And what happens here is we all, in some shape or form, are carrying around an imprint where it's either not safe to be in our body, it's not safe or acceptable to feel emotions, it's not okay to be our true authentic selves, because if we are, we're not going to fit in and get the love and attention that we need. So there's a lot of very deeply rooted belief systems and imprints that we all carry in our body that has led us now to be in this beautiful coping mechanism. I'm calling it beautiful because when we were younger, our amazing human bodies actually developed this coping mechanism in order to survive. There's a very deep, like, survival primal root of making sure that emotionally we're okay, we're looked after, the people, our caregivers love us so that they don't kill us, essentially, right? That we can stay alive, they keep feeding us. So there's a lot of psychological and energetic subconscious pieces that start to shift into place. And a big part of that is suppressing emotions. A big part of that in the world that I've never talked to anybody yet, I'm sure there are a few out there who were raised in a household that, and I'm curious about you actually, Amy, that were raised in a household where emotions were actually super validated and really welcomed and encouraged. And we were taught how to actually move that energy as opposed to stuffing them down. So the pattern most of us have is some sort of desire to escape our pain, right? We don't know how to be in our pain. We don't know as a society how to be in grief, how to be, and as women, we don't know how to be angry. That's not safe, right? There's a lot of really complicated pieces there. And if and when these emotions start to arise, we will always be reaching for that thing that's going to make it go away. There's that very deeply ingrained pattern, which is any addiction. Whether you study hardcore drug addiction or food addiction or Instagram addiction, I mean, all these things are triggering those parts of our brain that are alerting us that it's unsafe to feel pain. It's unsafe to feel uncomfortable emotions. It's unsafe to be maybe in a certain relationship. And we need to get out of it. We need to get ourselves distracted. We need to avoid it. We need to stuff it down. And that's where most of us, use food. I mean, because that's what's accessible as a child, right? We can
Mhm.
easily access sugar, less easily cocaine, right? As a child, or alcohol. So we don't really
Yeah.
develop those until later, if that's your thing. But
Right. Right. That's that's funny. That's interesting. Um, as you're talking, I'm thinking about, like you said, what about my household? So I'm
yeah,
thinking about how I grew up. And I would say that emotionally, my house was, it was pretty open. It was pretty welcomed. Where I can anchor my, we'll say, food addiction, sugar addiction that I have since overcome. But if I look back in my 20s and 30s, did I have an eating disorder? No, I had disordered eating. And that was from being chubby as a child, where food in my household was used as a soothing mechanism. So yes, you can express yourself, you can be angry, you can be sad, you can be, I was known as the person in my family that gets shit done. But yet here's the reward after dinner. Here's a dessert. Here's a reward for your A in school. Here's a food reward for, and so that kind of became more of a reward system rather than a substitute for my emotions, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Beautiful. Yeah, absolutely. And most of us have all of those intertwined. That was for me as well. Like anytime I got a goal at soccer or did good at school, right? It was, let's go for ice cream. That like reward system is really deeply built in. And even
Mhm.
if we didn't get those messages like in our household, which is rare, and that sounds beautiful that your family was open to emotions. I know mine was like, for me personally, I was always I was too sensitive. So there was already
Mhm.
that messaging of like, you're too much and it's not okay to be crying that much, right? It's not okay to feel that much. My mom never showed emotion. She was always, everything was fine, nothing bothered her. And like that to me mirrored that there was something wrong with me. So these are where I personally, started getting those imprints. And even if you don't get it in your household in some shape or form, which I believe we all do in little ways, we then learn it very quickly from media, from movies, from our teachers at school, from our friends' parents, from your church leader. Like, that it is deeply ingrained in our society, in our patriarchal society, I'll say, that emotions are inconvenient, right? Emotions are useless. You're weak if you show emotion, especially. I know men deal with that a lot, maybe a lot more than women, but we get looked down on as women. You can't be a powerful CEO and be crying and have feelings, right? Like there's just so much intertwined in like the beliefs in our society that, continue these imprints.
Now, you had just mentioned your own experience, and I know, most of the time you start listening to a podcast, it leads off with the guest story, but I didn't want to start there. I wanted to pull people in, and now you kind of open that door. How'd you get here in dealing with sugar addiction, cravings, emotional eating, all the like? Because most of the time, as we know, and as you alluded to, practitioners in this space, experts in this space will have gone through their own pain to purpose.
Yeah.
So, how'd you get here?
100%.
Yep.
100%. Yeah. So my journey, I always say that my journey as a sugar addict started in the womb. And, I know now, and actually they're doing some fascinating studies now, the impacts of a mother carrying a child, like eating a lot of sugar. No doubt. My mom has always been a sugar addict and she still is to this day. It's something she very much struggles with. And it's a big
Mhm.
part of why I do what I do. And that was really where I started getting my heavy doses of sugar. So on the physical component, I was always drawn to sugar. And growing up, like you mentioned, similar to your household, it was used for everything. Treating yourself, it was used for showing love. When mom and I would spend time together, we'd be baking. I know that's a really common one for many people. So sugar was very ingrained, right? And if you were good, and also if I was crying, let's make you feel better. Let's go have some ice cream. So there was a
Yeah.
lot of like that emotional, like numbing patterning that started really early. And that was what my mom knew. And she was trying to make me feel better and all the things. So very early on, definitely started for me. It didn't help that I was also a really picky eater. I always joke that I only ate white things. So it was white pasta, white bread, white cheese. Like I wanted the white things. I even
Mhm.
ate
Sugar.
sugar cubes,
Oh,
straight up
yeah.
sugar
Yep.
cubes. Oh gosh. I used to just pop those like, I don't know, gum, right?
Yep.
Oh, it makes me quiver thinking about that now. I couldn't imagine putting a sugar cube in my mouth. But yeah, loved sugar, and it was never thought of as something bad or, it was very much in our household. My mom had candy always around, and
Mhm.
yeah, very much part of my upbringing. Fast forward, went off to university, ate the standard, I don't standard American diet, even though I live in Canada.
Yeah.
Standard Canadian diet, very similar: pizza, pasta, junk food. I was always very active. I played soccer, I worked out, so I was able to sort of not show any effects of the way I was eating. Obviously, when we're younger, we have faster metabolisms and all these things too. So
Right.
weight gain was never really a concern of mine, although it did definitely fluctuate. And then my real epiphany, looking back in hindsight, started after university. My husband and I both actually went and worked in the financial industry. Fun fact, I have my degree in finance. No, don't use it. I don't even manage our money. My husband does that now. And yeah, we went and worked in these jobs, high powered jobs, really, oh, we're successful. We have all the things. It looks really good from the outside, but we were both completely miserable. And for me, that 2 years that I worked in that environment was really my rock bottom emotionally. I remember coming home every single day after work, completely drained, physically, emotionally, energetically, spiritually. I would grab a bottle of wine, I would grab some junk food, maybe some pasta for dinner, and I would just numb out in the bath and watch Netflix. Like it was all the coping mechanisms, numbing out mechanisms at once.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like barely getting through life. It was affecting my relationship with my husband. He was also miserable. Our souls were just being sucked dry. And this was really, I would say, for both of us, our rock bottom. And for me specifically, thinking about the food and the coping and that's just the height of my addictive behavior and emotional eating. Luckily, we got to a point where we said enough is enough and we took a leap of faith. We actually both quit our jobs and traveled to South America for a year. So I always wanted to learn Spanish. So we went on this amazing sort of soul searching journey, and it was just that. It was absolutely incredible. And one of the things that really shifted for me down there was seeing how people related to their food differently. They actually went to the market and bought food. They actually cooked their own meals. It wasn't fast food or takeout or quick. They just
Mm-hmm.
had a different relationship with, they knew where their food came from. We spent a lot of time actually even hiking through farmers' fields, like on different hikes that we went on, and really just seeing where food came from. It wasn't just packaged in a store, being marketed to you. So that really started turning the gears, I think, for me on my relationship with food and how disconnected I was from nourishing myself or even being engaged in that process of caring about nourishing myself. I would just be shoving food in because I had to do that and because it
Mm-hmm.
tasted delicious. So coming home, just actually 2 weeks before coming home, we went through what I call my accidental sugar detox. So we were actually living in the middle of the Colombian jungle at a yoga center, living completely off the land. So this was the first time in my life that I've ever not eaten processed food. We didn't have access to it. It was a shock to the system. Didn't know what was going on. I felt like crap. I couldn't sleep. I was like, my energy was all over the place. Obviously, withdrawal symptoms taking place. I didn't know that at the
I
time.
was gonna say, yeah, you were basically withdrawing, like from a
I
drug.
totally was.
Yeah.
Yeah. And actually, total side note that is unrelated, but that same 2 weeks, I actually also got a parasite. So don't drink the water. Don't drink the water. And so it was, let's just say physically, it was just horrible. It was a
Yeah.
horrible situation. And I'm surprised I made it out, but we did. And about 2 weeks later, came home to Canada, and the shift in my taste buds already, just physically having been off the crap for 2 weeks, was enough to really wake me up and open my eyes to how much sugar and processed food had complete control over my mouth, my taste buds, my control, my drive, my health. And that really started planting that seed for me to really look into how I was nourishing myself. We both came home just wanting, we felt like crap. We wanted to clean up our diet. We actually, at the fun fact at the time, went vegetarian because we thought that was the way to do it. And just really went clean and got all the junk out of our lives. And that really started my own journey and interest in nutrition. I went to nutritional coaching school. Yeah, started down that path, and this was about 9 years ago. And, it was in the beginning a total roller coaster myself, trying to figure out going off sugar, binging on sugar, going off sugar, binging on sugar for about 3 years, until I figured out really these root cause pieces by accident, actually, with a business coach that I was working with. And, that really changed everything when I started combining that and really doing my own healing and doing my own work and overcoming and really making peace with food and sugar. And now, that's what I'm passionate to support my clients with.
Oh my gosh, that is such a great story. And you said something in there that I really want to come back and focus on, that it was really only 2 weeks of eating non-processed foods to shift your taste buds. And we know in today's society, food makers are making foods so hyper palatable and that you literally, like, they are triggering the addiction for people to come back for more and to need more. And something simple like a raspberry isn't going to taste as sweet as, raspberry preserves that you're putting on white Schwabel's bread with Jif, peanut butter. So I think that that's something that we have to hone in on, in that it only took you 2 weeks. So everyone out there that's like, oh my gosh, I'm so addicted to sugar. I can't stop my cravings. What do I do? 2 weeks and your taste buds can shift, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I will say it's so different for everybody. I mean, having done this work for so long, a big part of like my programs and the work I do is definitely, helping my clients detox from sugar
Yeah.
when they're ready. And it does take a different amount of time, right? For everybody's body to change. It depends on how old you are, how long you've been overdosing on sugar,
Yeah.
how quickly you do. Is it cold turkey or do you taper off? Like there's lots of factors for sure. But our taste buds can regenerate when we take away that crazy hit that we're getting from those hyper, palatable foods. Our body resets, right? And slowly that does take time, right? But absolutely, in just a couple weeks, you can already be sleeping better. You'll feel better. You might even start losing weight. Your skin will be getting better. You'll notice maybe some of those physical cravings subsiding, but still needing to work on the emotional stuff because that takes a lot more time.
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely. It doesn't have to be this big, scary, 6-year journey. It can happen pretty quick and start, that piece can be really motivating when we're like, oh, I like my mouth doesn't need that, that ice cream anymore. And we can start to really use that as sort of a leg up to continue on the work there.
Well, and I think you said something that is intriguing as well, that everyone is different. So even if we looked at, let's say, a drug addiction, because, and correct me if I'm wrong, but sugar lights up the same part of the brain on an MRI as cocaine. So we
Yeah.
might as well look at it like you are addicted to cocaine and
Yeah.
you have to come off of that. And yeah, sure, in 2 weeks you're going to detox, you're going to lose that incessant craving, but to your point, what's the drive? Is it social? Are you triggered by something? Is it emotional that sets you off and then that's your cue to go use, whether it's cocaine or sugar? That's your cue to go use to self-soothe. So I'm not saying in 2 weeks you'll be good to go. There's a lot more digging underneath the surface that people have to do, but I think it's encouraging to know that your taste buds can at least start to shift, and you can start enjoying different foods that you didn't before because they didn't hit your sensory sweet taste
Fully.
like you
Fully.
were, like the processed foods do.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm really glad you actually mentioned that because one of the blocks that a lot of my clients come up against in the beginning of this journey is like real food tastes bad. Right? Like I don't like nothing's going to taste good again. Like there's this fear that, I'm just going to have to eat boring broccoli, rice and chicken for the rest of my life, right?
Uh-huh.
And, to your point, I always encourage my clients, it is fascinating when you actually get off of the junk, you start to actually taste food again. You actually like the real food starts to have more of a taste. I will also say there's a massive difference between, say, a tomato that is GMO'd and mass produced and isn't even really red. They inject red dye into it versus a tomato that you're growing in your garden. That's going to be a massive taste difference as well. So a lot of the real food that you might be comparing to in your mind is actually just toxic, devoid of flavor versus a real tomato. Like when you go to Italy and have real tomato, right? You
Mm.
just imagine like the juiciness exploding in your mouth versus like those tomatoes in the store that are like kind of white, kind of red. You're like, is
Yeah.
this actually a tomato? Right. So, don't be discouraged. Like real food full of nutrients and good quality grown food is absolutely delicious, right? Grass-fed beef. Like we buy a cow every year from a friend of ours who raises it, and it's just like the night and day difference in taste and flavor and nourishment, obviously for our body. And once your taste buds over time start to grow back, you'll start to really enjoy healthy food again. Right. Not to say you'll never enjoy candy again. I mean, we always have that built in, that sweet taste is always going to be delicious.
Right.
It's not like that's never going to go away. Although I will share personally for myself, and I can speak for my husband too, there are like sweet things that we used to love eating in the past, like certain candy or like chemical crap that definitely tastes horrible to us now. Like if we ever had that, we've tested over the years, and it's like, oh, I used to love this, and now my mouth is like, get this out of here. So that can happen. I mean, it's inspiring when we really like again step back into control and take back our taste buds, right? We have to take them back, right?
We did,
They've
yeah.
been hijacked from us.
They have. They literally have. That's a great way to put it too, because it is, we have big food, we have big pharma, and big food is in it to win it. And they will do what they have to do to keep you as a customer, to keep you coming back. And that includes creating an addiction in your body, whether you know it or not, whether you know it's happening or not, it's happening beneath the surface. Now we talk about, I think, and we all know what happens on the outside with consumption of too much sugar and processed foods, right? We're going to gain weight. Our skin's going to go dull. Our hair's going to fall out because we're not getting the nourishment and the nutrients that we need. But can you talk more about what is actually going on the inside? And you alluded to in the beginning, kind of like a cascade that occurs when we eat this. What's happening inside of us?
For sure. So much more than we can even talk about here today, for sure. And then like you're asking maybe more some of the physical, but I would even bring in some of the like the emotional stuff, right? When we're
Yeah, absolutely. All of it.
all of
Because
it.
I think people automatically go to physical. I need to cut sugar to lose weight and fit into my swimsuit this summer, period. And it's like,
Totally.
well, but it's more than that. Like, that's a great driving mechanism. But we all know that sometimes we just go, you know what? Screw this. I don't care what I look like. I'm getting older, whatever. But what about the inside and how you're feeling and thinking and processing and
Yeah.
everything? Go. Yeah, let's do it.
Go. Exactly. I mean,
Go.
as you all already know, that's the place that I just love talking about, because when we do this, right, essentially, this may ruffle some feathers, but I deeply believe like if we truly unconditionally love ourselves, we don't treat our bodies like shit. So most of us are walking around not loving ourselves,
Yep.
and that's a tough pill to swallow for anybody listening. I'm still on that journey myself. I don't know if I'll ever like fully be there. I think we're always unfolding and learning, and learning to connect and love ourselves and learn who we even truly are. I mean, that's a big part of this process. But when we treat our bodies poorly, i.e., getting drunk, eating a ton of sugar, right, eating crap and then feeling like crap, we are just constantly mistreating ourselves, right? And that creates a turmoil inside of I can't trust myself. I don't love my body. I hate myself. There's a lot of negative hate talk that we do subconsciously on a daily basis as women. We're carrying a ton of guilt, right? There's a ton of guilt. You're eating a piece of chocolate cake, guilting and shaming yourself as you're eating it, which by the way affects your digestion and is going to make it even 10 times worse than if you just enjoyed that piece of cake and loved it every minute of it. So the guilt and the shame that we carry as well, all of this toxic load, it is a toxin in the body, right? The negative self-talk, the self-hate, the shame, the guilt, the just that heavy weight of all of this like negativity very much physically affects us as well, affects our hormones. We now know the increases our stress levels, right? We know the role of stress in the body, affecting the nervous system, leading to disease, leading to autoimmune disease, leading to all sorts of diseases when we store emotions, when we don't treat ourselves kindly, when we're in this constant stress state. So on that side of things, that's what's going on when we're mistreating ourselves with junk. If we're coming at it with that self-hate, I will say I still eat sugar, and when I do choose to have sugar, I'm enjoying the heck out of it. Like I make my own sourdough bread as well, which is definitely a carbohydrate. Oh my gosh, just as fresh sourdough with butter. It's like I'm just loving myself and I'm just
Yeah.
enjoying it, and knowing what my body can handle. I'm not eating the whole loaf, right? I know what I can do, and I'm having that, with my protein at breakfast and all the stuff. So it depends what energy you're coming into it with. And I would say that even affects the physical cascade. I did kind of allude to that as well. I don't have any research that I could spout off the top of my head in this moment, but it's fascinating again when our body is in a rest and digest state, what we eat actually gets properly processed and digested, even if it's a piece of chocolate cake, right? Yes, that's still going to drastically spike our insulin levels. Over time, it's going to weaken our pancreas and our insulin. We're going to get maybe insulin resistance. We're going to get diabetes. We're going to get just issues with our metabolic flexibility, right? Becoming so dependent on carbohydrates for fuel source. For sure, all those physical pieces are going to show up. But if we can be more present with eating and actually eat not stressed, not on the go, not in the car. I know that used to be my MO, eating on the go. I'd be eating my muffin and my coffee and not even paying attention to what I was
Yep.
eating. So there's a lot of factors here, of course, that affect the physical piece of even how we digest a piece of chocolate cake, for example, right? And how like present you can be. I actually need to do this for myself. I need to get another CGM on and practice this, because it's fascinating to see that level of like, I'm really, really enjoying this chocolate cake and it's really high quality. I made it myself, right? Versus shame eating and eating on the go, right? Just stuffing it in, not even thinking about it. There's going to be I guarantee there's a difference in your like your blood sugar graph if you actually graphed it.
Oh
So
yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, that's not the answer, of course. I'm not saying you just need to be present and you can overdose on sugar and be healthy. That's not what I'm saying. We definitely still need to get sugar out of our lives. And, the physical, all the things that I just mentioned, hopefully are a motivator for any of you listening to get back on track. And of course, obviously those listening to your podcast, I mean, how much this is only going to help your thyroid, right? And help all the places in your body, all your liver, your intestine, your gut, all your brain, all the things that are going to be really happy if you get off some of this processed food and at least start weaning off.
Okay. Sorry. I thought that my internet paused. That's why I was like, oh no. And then I looked down at you and you're still moving. So we're good. Okay. We'll just take this part
I'm
out.
here.
Yeah, or no, we'll just take this part out. So you had mentioned the mental and emotional component and tie in to, do we love ourselves? How do we feel about, are we beating ourselves up when we're eating? But even go deeper, and I'm going to kind of prompt you here because I have a lot of patients, obviously, that are dealing with thyroid and hormone issues, and the audience too that's listening right now. And yes, we can absolutely say if your thyroid is off and you're not being treated properly, that is going to create depression and anxiety. If your estrogen is low and your progesterone is low, you're going to be more anxious and agitated. If your testosterone is low, you're not going to be able to think properly. So we have those direct connection to thyroid and hormones and mood, 100%, brain function, memory, cognition, all of that. But then, what I'm trying to do always in this show is give people both sides. So yes, all of that is important. And we can use thyroid hormone, we can use bioidentical hormone, but we always have to come back over here to what are you doing? Because we can only throw so many hormones at you at once. And if you are consuming excess sugar or consuming excess processed foods, and we know that there's an emotional component to that, there's a mental component to that, it will affect how you think and how you process information and how you process the world around you and how you respond to the world around you. I think we have to dive more into that, and even the funky thoughts that go through our brain when we are essentially loaded down with sugar. Because all too often, I talk about Band-Aids being used over here, antidepressants, anti-anxiety, for what is really the root cause, thyroid and hormones. But I think we can say the same thing over here on the other side with what you're eating. And are you on a Band-Aid medication, antidepressant, anti-anxiety, antipsychotic, but really you just need to clean up your world and your diet and what you're putting in your mouth?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, I'm so glad you brought this up, because like anxiety, depression, I know these are things that are like becoming epidemics, right? Or if they're not already an epidemic. I mean,
Right. I mean, even
everybody and their
kids,
uncle.
right? We got kids on
Yeah.
antidepressants.
Yeah, well, we have
That's not
kids with diabetes as
situational.
well, and like there's so much going wrong, right? And what I hear, like we're having this wonderful conversation about the physical, obviously the hormone, the thyroid, like there's a physical component going on, and I'm bringing to this conversation like the energetic, emotional component that's going on, the somatic, actual nervous system imprints that we're carrying, and how that's being now proven to lead to disease as well and
Mhm.
lead to this. And I actually love, I might get this quote wrong, but I'm a big fan of Gabor Mate, I already mentioned, and I love his definition of depression. And I would agree with this in the work that I've done, especially understanding emotions and somatic work and nervous system at such a deep level. He says that emotions are simply just a depression of emotions. So when we depress an emotion, so a lifetime of stuffing your emotions down. So anytime you're sad, sucking it up. Anytime someone dies in your family, sucking in your tears and getting on with it. Anytime you're angry, just like bottling it up and keeping it in. The bottling up and the emotional baggage that we all carry for decades is absolutely being stored in our cells as toxins. And I fully see this as well as such a link to depression. Like, no wonder we feel flat, we feel done with life, we feel exhausted, we feel burnt out, right? We feel anxious. Some people may end up with that more anxious nervous system tendency, which is very activated nervous system versus the low actually disassociation that happens in the nervous system with depression.
Mhm.
So for each of us, it is going to show up differently. I know myself, I struggled with anxiety my whole life. Not luckily for many years now that I've really gotten to the root of that. For me, being that emotional disconnection that I had in childhood, I didn't feel safe. So I felt anxious. That makes sense, right? When our nervous system doesn't feel safe, we're going to be living in anxiety.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of components, and we're in this vicious cycle with it, right? Because we feel anxious, we feel depressed. So I'm going to eat some sugar or some crap or drink some wine, and then I'm going to feel more anxious and depressed, right? And it's just going to keep cycling. And obviously my thyroid's going to be playing into that, and all these imbalances, and we're kind of being hit from all sides. So I'd say there's multiple areas at the foundation there that obviously need to be addressed. Our hormone health, our physical, like what's going on inside. Are you getting enough nutrients, right, for your brain chemicals to support happiness, right? And are you living this life that you hate? Are you talking to yourself negatively every day? Are you in a miserable relationship? Are you stifling who you truly are? Are you not living your purpose? Are you disconnected from nature? Are you not getting sunlight and vitamin D every day because you're slathered up in sunscreen and wearing sunglasses all the time?
Yep.
There's so many factors, right, that play into allowing ourselves to feel happy, right? And to experience all of life. And I think most of us are walking around a little bit numbed out emotionally because we've been taught to live in this range, right? You can't be too happy or too sad, and you got to get over it quick. So we've learned how to kind of like get on with life. And sometimes that's necessary. I've got to feed the kids, I've got to get on with life. I can't take time to fall apart right now. But that's an important part of actually being able to feel joy, feel happiness, right? Is actually feeling some of the heavier stuff as well. So there's lots of pieces there. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, there's a lot of there's so many pieces, and there's so many different aspects to full body healing. Meaning, as you're talking, I'm thinking about myself. And so I will work with, let's say, a colleague on my hormones. They'll write my hormone treatment. But then I'll go over here to this person because they're an expert in peptides. And I'll go see this person who does stem cells. And then I'll go see this person who does trauma work. And so you can't expect to do a one-stop shop where you're going to go to someone and everything is taken care of. We're dealing with your emotions, we're dealing with your trauma, we're dealing with your sugar addiction, we're dealing with your hormones, we're dealing with your thyroid, we're dealing with your nutrition and your exercise and your sleep and your digestion and your adrenals and your da 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 da. Sometimes it takes seeing multiple people. And I'm driving this point home. Mainly, this is a big message for my patients that maybe you might need to work with someone like Danielle and work through some of this, because then all the therapies that you're doing come together. And you're
Yeah.
giving me nuggets to think about. And I'm actually, and this is what I do with guests. I think about patients. I think about people I'm working with. I think about where they're stuck. And I go, okay, so and so is just more anxious than usual and really, really hyper vigilant about her health. And we're doing all the things over here, and her blood work looks good and everything should be falling in line, but it's not. And there's still this over here. And I think this is something that she needs to deal with you, like getting to that root cause of the addiction. What is driving your emotions? What is driving your eating habits that are going to totally derail everything that we're doing over here with your thyroid, your hormones, and your insulin? Everything has to work together.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so glad that you mentioned that. I call it the support team. We all
Yeah.
need a support team. And at any time, I hope nobody listening is getting overwhelmed by that, because you don't have to have 10 members on your team at all times, right? Maybe it's one at a time, right? For three
Mm-hmm.
months, you're working with someone, then 3 months, someone else, right? Like, follow your own path. But I think that is really beautiful, because this is one of the problems I think with our traditional medical system is people go to the doctor and assume they're going to total body heal them, right?
Yeah.
And we're ultimately the drivers of that. And there is exactly like when we talk about holistic health, there's a lot of places that we need to look, right? We need to address our spiritual health, our, our physical health, our emotional health, right? All these areas, our sleep health, all the things that you just mentioned, and to kind of complete us as a healthy human. And this is where our medical system just completely misses the mark, right? They're just
Mhm.
focusing on, obviously, on just prescribing you something to make your symptoms go away, but they're not really looking at the whole picture, which is where I'm a massive advocate for having a support team, right? And working with someone who's an expert like you. I mean, this is so beautiful, right? You're an expert in thyroid, right? And probably a few other things, of course, right? And then you're going to go over here and see the expert on adrenals, right?
Right.
And when we focus as practitioners on something or anything in life, when you work with an expert, you're going to get expert, support, right? As opposed to somebody who's trying to be good at everything, right? That's what's that like,
Yep.
jack of all trades, master of
Master of
none.
none. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. It's true, right? And that makes a difference. You're going to get a different level of support, right? When you're going to a certain practitioner who's really honed in and spent their whole lives dedicated to this one topic, right? And I think that's really important, and to me, so worth it to spend money on, spend time on. I know it can feel a bit overwhelming for many people, and I think that also gives hope for, like you said, this client you're talking about, right? Who's doing all the right things. You've got her on all these amazing protocols. Her body should be shifting. Things should be shifting, but they're not.
Yeah.
Right. And it gives us hope to be like, oh, that's okay. I might just be missing this little emotional piece over here. I might just be missing this little piece over here. Right. As opposed to like, well, my body's broken, forget it. Right? Like
Mhm.
there's always something else that we can do. And, it might just be, like you said, working with someone else or finding that next phase to help shift things for you.
Yeah, just that next dial to turn, and I would even go as far as to bring in functional and integrative and alternative and whatever you wanna call it, medicine or modalities, because if you have someone saying that they are a master of all trades, you gotta run, because
Yes.
nobody is.
Yeah.
If they claim that they can do it all for you, no, no, you have to specialize. You absolutely have to specialize. Now, we're talking a lot of doom and gloom here, so let's shift it into what can people do if they have resonated with this conversation, if they're sitting there going, "Oh, man, yeah, there's a lot of stuff here that's driving my sugar addiction, my cravings, my emotional eating." Are there any steps that people can do right now, even, before they jump in with working with you or diving into your material?
100%. Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up. I think that is important because it can be really overwhelming, and it is a long journey. I always share the fun pun. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, but it takes work, right? This is not a quick fix. And this is where a lot of people get their feathers in a ruffle, because everybody out there is looking for a quick magic pill, right? Give me the magic shake that I can take to make me lose all the weight and all the things. But when we're actually trying to create lasting change, we've got to commit some time to it and some energy. And that's even probably with thyroid health, right? And all the hormone health. Like, it takes time for the body to heal. It takes time for the body to shift. So same thing with our nervous system, our emotions, healing trauma, like all that stuff takes time. So the first place to start 100% is awareness and curiosity. So just starting to, as much as you can, without guilt, without judgment, just with curiosity, bringing in an awareness of, maybe, where did this come from for me? Where is that mechanism in me that is not wanting to feel my feelings, right? And maybe even just starting by being curious about that. What do I feel like my relationship with my emotions are, right? Like, do I feel really open to feeling, and every day, do I actually allow my feelings to come, and is it done in a healthy way? Or do I notice myself trying to avoid that? Right? Do I notice myself in numbing out patterns, whether it's staying busy all the time, binging on Netflix at the end of the day because we're exhausted and stressed, like scrolling, good old Instagram, very much designed for that purpose, right? To
Yep.
help us move out. So just starting to notice where those patterns may be showing up for you, and doing this, again, no judgment. This is something we all struggle with. You're not broken. You're not unique in that way, right? This is just
Right.
a simple awareness exercise of like, where is this showing up and how often am I actually doing this? right? And do I feel really uncomfortable sitting in stillness with myself? A lot of people can't do that because it's very
Mhm.
scary and very unsafe, right? So just starting to get a gauge of where you're at with that loving curiosity. And then I would say, especially around the emotional food connection component, an exercise I love having my clients just start out with is literally just checking in with your emotional body and your physical body before you eat anything. So you're reaching in the cupboard and you're grabbing that granola bar, just checking in, like, where am I at right now? Like, can I identify an emotion in my body? If not, can I identify a physical somatic sensation? So maybe like there's some tightness in my neck or my jaw is like really stiff, or something physical there, and just jotting that down, just maybe keeping a little track of that for about a week, and just starting to notice those emotional connections. Like, interesting, every time I'm feeling a bit lonely, I'm reaching for food, right? And we can start to, in that, build your own awareness of where those specific patterns are showing up for you. And then from there, obviously, there's steps that we work on in shifting that
Mhm.
and tapping into that. But those are, I would say, ground zero places to really start with that inner piece, the root cause, really starting to understand your unique flavor of this challenge and of your addictive patterns, and then obviously we can go from there.
Well, and you're actually giving my audience, which I thank you for, a 3-part kick emotional eating workshop series so they can really kind of go through your guidance and dig a little bit deeper into emotional eating and all the things, all the tips that you just gave them as well.
Yes, happy to do that. Definitely happy to give that away. That is an amazing, powerful workshop. It's a 3-part workshop, and it really dives deeper into the emotional piece, right? As a big root cause of what's really going on for many of us driving that food, and starting to learn how to be with your emotions, process your emotions. Like, just there's a lot of skills that I teach in there that you can start applying right away. And yeah, hopefully your audience really loves that.
That's incredible. I mean, all of your information has been so helpful, so helpful. I'm blown away. It's simple, but it's not until an expert talks about it that it literally kind of kicks your brain into thinking through your own behavior patterns and your own choices and the way that you eat and how you use food or sugar to self-soothe or to deal with trauma. I mean, it just really, these types of hard conversations bring things to the surface for people to deal with and look at within themselves. It's like showing them a mirror when you and I are talking. And I think that that's what's needed, though, for people to break past their habits, their addictions, and really start to make significant change in their body.
Yeah, 100%. I'm a big advocate of tough love. I think we
Mhm.
need, as hard as it is for some of you to maybe swallow some of the things that we talked about today,
Yeah.
you know, we need to, I need to, I know my purpose is to shine a light on these things for you, because what you're doing ain't working, right? And we look at the world that we live in right now, something we're all doing is not working. So
Right.
we need to start looking in different directions, right? I mean, following the mainstream advice, mainstream, whatever the heck we're being told to do, is making us sicker than ever. And we need to wake up. We need to absolutely have somebody to like plant those seeds that, and if anything I said today made you like really recoil, that's a sign that that's probably an area that you really need to look into, right?
Yeah.
So, when we get faced with these, any information that goes way against our belief systems or what we were taught growing up, all this stuff, right? When we start really going against the grain and learning a different way outside of what we're taught, this is, I believe, where the answers lie, right? Where freedom lies, where happiness lies, where health lies, because it ain't lying in the system that we're currently partaking in.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. So true. Well, Danielle, can you tell people where they can find you?
Yeah, absolutely. I would definitely suggest coming and checking out my podcast. It's called Beyond Sugar Freedom. You're going to be a guest on there as well. I can't wait to have you on, Amy. You can find me. My website is Danielle Daem, and I'm on Instagram and Facebook as well, Danielle Daem. So come check me out there. Those are the best places. And feel free to shoot me a message if you have any questions. Would love to connect.
We will put all of that in the show notes for everyone. So thank you once again for being here and for sharing your knowledge.
Right. Thanks for having me. This was so much fun.